Admiral Cathvar stood before the massive holographic display in his command center, watching thousands of green dots move across the star map. Each dot represented a warship under his command. The sight filled him with pride. This was how real wars were fought, with overwhelming numbers, precise formations, and the crushing weight of superior force. The Hegemony had ruled the outer spiral arm for 3,000 years using this simple principle. When enemies appeared, you sent more ships than they could possibly handle. When rebels stirred up trouble, you arrived with enough firepower to turn their planets into glass. It was a formula that had never failed. "Sir, the fleet count is complete," reported his aide, a young officer whose scales still gleamed with the bright colors of inexperience. "We have 812 combat vessels ready for deployment." Cathvar nodded approvingly. 800 ships for one human colony. Some might call it excessive, but he preferred to think of it as educational. These humans had been causing problems across the galaxy with their strange ideas and stubborn independence. It was time they learned how the galaxy really worked. The humans were an odd species. They had appeared on the galactic stage only 50 years ago, but already they were causing headaches for established powers. They refused to join the traditional alliance systems. They ignored the careful balance of power that kept the peace. Most strangely of all, they had the most unusual military doctrine anyone had ever seen. Every other species in the galaxy understood basic military science. When you went to war, you brought fleets. The Zephyrian Empire could field 10,000 ships for a major campaign. The Crystalline Collective moved in perfect geometric formations of 5,000 vessels. Even minor powers like the Aquatic Republics maintained battle groups of 500 ships or more. But humans? Humans sent one ship. Just one. The first time it happened, everyone assumed it was a mistake. The humans were attacking a pirate base that had been raiding their shipping lanes. Intelligence reports suggested the pirates had at least 50 ships. Surely the humans would send a proper fleet to deal with such a threat? Instead, one human ship arrived. One ship attacked 50 pirate vessels. One ship won. The second incident involved a border dispute with the Mantid swarm. The Mantids had assembled 200 ships to intimidate the humans into backing down from a contested system. The humans responded by sending one ship. That single vessel somehow convinced 200 Mantid warriors to retreat without firing a shot. The pattern continued. Border conflicts, pirate raids, territorial disputes. Every time, the humans sent exactly one ship. The galactic intelligence community was baffled. Either the humans were incredibly arrogant, or they were incredibly stupid. No one could field effective military force with single ships. It violated every principle of space warfare. Cathvar had studied the reports carefully. Human ships were large. He would give them that. Larger than most species built. But size alone meant nothing in space combat. A big target was still just a target. Numbers were what mattered. Overwhelming force was what won wars. The humans had established a colony on New Geneva 3 years ago. It was a beautiful world in a strategic location, with rich mineral deposits and perfect environmental conditions. Several species had shown interest in the system, but the humans had claimed it first. They had been developing it peacefully ever since. Too peacefully, in Cathvar's opinion. The galaxy needed to understand that strategic resources belonged to those with the strength to hold them. The Hegemony had that strength. The humans, with their single-ship foolishness, clearly did not. "Send the advanced scouts," Cathvar ordered. "I want complete surveillance of the New Geneva system. Monitor all communications. When the humans call for help, I want to know exactly how they respond." The attack on New Geneva was not meant to be a conquest. It was meant to be a lesson. Cathvar would arrive with overwhelming force. demonstrate the futility of resistance, and accept the human surrender. Then, the galaxy would see what happened to species that refused to acknowledge the natural order. The Hegemony fleet moved through hyperspace like a vast school of predatory fish. 800 ships traveling in perfect formation, their combined mass creating gravitational distortions that could be detected from light years away. It was a display of power meant to be seen and feared. As they approached the new Geneva system, HFY's communications officer began intercepting human transmissions. The humans had detected the approaching fleet, as expected. Their colony was sending desperate messages back to Earth. Emergency codes flashed across the communication channels. The humans were clearly panicking. "Sir, we're detecting a response from the human home system," the communications officer reported. "They're sending a reply to New Geneva." "Excellent. How many ships are they dispatching? I want to know what we'll be facing." The communications officer looked confused. "Sir, the message doesn't mention ship numbers. It just says that help is coming." HFY frowned. "That's impossible. No species sends military aid without specifying force strength. Keep monitoring. The real fleet composition data will come through on military channels." Hours passed. The Hegemony fleet continued its approach toward New Geneva. The human colony continued sending distress signals. Earth continued responding with reassuring messages. But no military deployment orders appeared on any channel. "Sir, this is very strange," the intelligence officer said. "We're not detecting any large-scale fleet movements from human space. No mobilization orders, no supply chain activation, nothing that would indicate a major military response." "Perhaps they're using quantum encryption we can't break," HFY suggested. "Or moving their fleets through hyperspace routes we don't know about." But deep down, he was beginning to worry. The humans had to know what they were facing. 800 ships was not a force that could be ignored or misunderstood. Any rational species would be assembling every available vessel to meet such a threat. The lack of visible human military activity was disturbing. The Hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system. Immediately, every sensor focused on the space around the human colony. Long-range scans revealed exactly what HFY expected to see. One small human settlement on the planet's surface. A few orbital stations, some civilian traffic. And no defending fleet. "Sir, I'm not detecting any significant military presence," the sensor operator reported. The humans appear to have no defensive fleet in position. HFY smiled grimly. "Then, they're even more foolish than I thought. Prepare to move the fleet into attack formation. We'll give them one chance to surrender before we demonstrate the price of defying the Hegemony." But even as he gave the orders, something nagged at the back of his mind. The humans had to know this was coming. They had to have some kind of plan. No species survived in the galaxy by being completely defenseless. What were the humans thinking? What did they know that he didn't? Fleet Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the center of the Human Defense Council chamber, studying the holographic display that showed the new Geneva system. 800 red dots surrounded the small blue dot that represented their colony. The Hegemony had made their intentions clear. This was a show of force meant to intimidate humanity into submission. "Recommendations?" Chun asked the assembled council members. "We could assemble the Third Fleet," suggested Admiral Park. 60 ships should be enough to give them second thoughts. "The Fifth Fleet is closer," added Admiral Morrison. 45 ships, but they could arrive 6 hours sooner. Chun listened to the debate with patience. Her colleagues were good officers, trained in traditional galactic warfare. They thought in terms of numbers and formations, just like every other species in the galaxy. They had not yet fully embraced what made humanity different. "Thank you for the analysis," Chun said finally. But I believe this situation calls for a different approach. Send the Indomitable. Captain Rodriguez has tactical command. The room fell silent. Several council members exchanged glances. Admiral Park cleared his throat carefully. Admiral Chun, with respect, the Indomitable is just one ship. The enemy has 800 vessels. Even our most advanced ship cannot possibly. Cannot what? Chun asked quietly. Park hesitated. He had been in the Defense Council for 15 years, but he still struggled with humanity's unique military philosophy. Cannot engage 800 enemy ships and expect to survive. Chun turned to face the holographic display. Admiral Park, how many wars has the Indomitable lost? None, but how many enemy fleets has she engaged? 17 different engagements, but Admiral Chun, this is different. 800 ships is more than all her previous opponents combined. Chun nodded slowly. That's exactly why we're sending her. The galaxy needs to understand what human military doctrine really means. Captain Rodriguez will provide that education. The orders went out within minutes. Across human space, the message was simple and direct. The Hegemony fleet threatening New Geneva would be handled by standard protocols. One ship would respond. Captain Elena Rodriguez received the orders aboard the UCS Indomitable while the ship was docked at Luna Station for routine maintenance. She read the mission parameters twice, then called her senior staff to the briefing room. The Indomitable was not like other ships in the human fleet. While most human vessels were large by galactic standards, the Indomitable was enormous. 15 kilometers from bow to stern, 3 kilometers at her widest point. She was more like a mobile city than a traditional warship. Her crew of 50,000 included not just military personnel, but scientists, engineers, medical staff, and support specialists. Ladies and gentlemen, Rodriguez addressed her senior staff. We have received deployment orders. The Hegemony has sent 800 ships to threaten New Geneva. We are tasked with resolving this situation. Commander Williams, her executive officer, studied the tactical display. 800 ships, Captain. That's significant force. It is, Rodriguez agreed. It's also irrelevant. Our mission is not to fight 800 ships. Our mission is to end this conflict before it becomes a war. The Indomitable undocked from Luna Station 6 hours after receiving orders. Her departure was witnessed by thousands of people on the lunar surface, but no other ships joined her. No escort vessels, no support fleet, no battle group. Just one ship heading out to face 800 enemies. As the Indomitable engaged her hyperspace drive, Rodriguez addressed her crew over the ship's internal communication system. 50,000 people listened as their captain explained what they were about to face. Some of you are wondering why we're going alone, Rodriguez said. Why we're not waiting for the 3rd Fleet or the 5th Fleet to join us. The answer is simple. We don't need them. Not because we're invincible, but because our mission is different from what the enemy expects. She paused, looking out through the observation deck at the swirling colors of hyperspace. The Hegemony thinks this is about military force. They think they can intimidate us with numbers. They're wrong. This is about demonstrating a principle that humanity has chosen to embrace. Wars should be decisive, brief, and conducted by professionals. We don't militarize entire star systems to win conflicts. We send the right tool for the job. The journey to New Geneva took 18 hours. During that time, the Indomitable's crew made final preparations. Weapon systems were checked and rechecked. Defensive systems were calibrated to maximum efficiency. But there was no sense of panic or desperation. The crew had done this before. In the medical bay, Dr. Hassan prepared for casualties, not among the Indomitable's crew, but among the enemy. Human military doctrine emphasized disabling enemy ships rather than destroying them whenever possible. Lives saved today might become allies tomorrow. In the engineering sections, Chief Engineer Patel monitored the ship's power systems. The Indomitable carried technologies that most of the galaxy considered theoretical. Quantum field generators, zero-point energy taps, and defensive systems based on principles that human scientists had only recently discovered. Each system represented decades of focused research and development. "Captain," the communications officer called out as they approached the new Geneva system. "We're receiving transmissions from the Hegemony fleet. They're demanding our surrender before we even arrive." Rodriguez smiled. "Inform them that we'll discuss terms when we meet them in person." The Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Geneva system, exactly 18 hours and 14 minutes after departing Luna Station. Immediately, every sensor in the system focused on the new arrival. The Hegemony fleet had been waiting information around the human colony. 800 ships arranged in a perfect sphere of overwhelming force. Admiral Kethvar, aboard his flagship, stared at the sensor readings with disbelief. The human ship was massive, larger than any vessel he had ever encountered. But it was still just one ship against 800. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the human vessel is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're requesting a direct communication link with you." "Put them through," Kethvar ordered. He was curious to hear what the humans thought they could accomplish with such ridiculous odds. Captain Rodriguez appeared on the main screen, looking calm and professional. Behind her, Kethvar could see the bridge of the human ship, clean, efficient, and surprisingly spacious. "Admiral Kethvar," Rodriguez said politely, "I am Captain Elena Rodriguez of the UCS Indomitable. I believe you have business to discuss." Kethvar leaned forward in his command chair. "Captain Rodriguez, you seem to be confused about your tactical situation. I have 800 ships. You have one. I suggest you surrender immediately and spare your crew unnecessary suffering." Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. "I understand your position, Admiral. However, I'm afraid I must decline your suggestion. Instead, let me make a counter-offer. You have exactly 1 minute to withdraw all Hegemony forces from this system and return to your own territory." The bridge of Kethvar's flagship erupted in shocked laughter. Even his most disciplined officers couldn't contain their amusement at such an outrageous demand. "Captain Rodriguez," Kethvar said when the laughter died down, "you are either insane or suicidal. One ship cannot threaten 800. This is not how space warfare works." Rodriguez checked her chronometer. 45 seconds remaining, Admiral." "You're bluffing," Kethvar declared. "No one fights those odds and expects to win." 30 seconds. Kethvar's amusement faded. There was something in the human captain's tone that made him uncomfortable. She sounded completely confident, as if she actually believed she could back up her impossible threat. 15 seconds, Admiral. Kethvar gripped his command chair tightly. The human captain had to be bluffing. No species was insane enough to face such overwhelming odds without a plan. But what plan could possibly work against 800 ships? "Time's up," Rodriguez said calmly. And that's when everything changed. Admiral Kethvar made the decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "All ships, open fire. Destroy that human vessel." 800 ships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. The space around the Indomitable filled with deadly energy. Plasma bolts, particle beams, kinetic projectiles, and fusion missiles converged on the lone human ship from every direction. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The energy impact created a brilliant flash of light that temporarily blinded sensors across the system. When the glare faded, Kethvar expected to see debris where the human ship had been. Instead, he saw something impossible. The Indomitable hung in space, completely undamaged. Her shields hadn't even flickered. The massive barge that should have vaporized any ship had been absorbed as easily as rainwater hitting an ocean. What? Kethver whispered, staring at his displays in disbelief. That's impossible. No ship can withstand that much firepower. On the Indomitable's bridge, Captain Rodriguez checked their status boards with calm professionalism. Damage report? No damage, Captain, her tactical officer replied. Shields absorbed the entire barrage. Energy levels actually increased by 2%. The shield generators are feeding excess power back into our systems. Rodriguez nodded. Excellent. Open a channel to the Hegemony flagship. Admiral Kethver's face appeared on the screen again, but now his confident arrogance had been replaced by shock and confusion. How? He demanded. How did you survive that? Admiral, Rodriguez said patiently, you seem to be operating under some misconceptions about human military technology. Allow me to provide a demonstration of the actual tactical situation. She turned to her weapons officer. Commander Singh, please disable the Hegemony flagship's primary weapon systems. Use minimum force. Aye, Captain. Targeting their main gun batteries now. A single beam of coherent light flashed out from the Indomitable. It lasted less than a second and was so precisely focused that it barely registered on most sensors. But aboard Kethver's flagship, every primary weapon system suddenly went dark. Sir, his weapons officer called out frantically. All main batteries are offline. The beam somehow disrupted our power coupling systems without damaging anything else. I've never seen anything like it. Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system with polite concern. Admiral, I hope you understand that this was merely a demonstration. We could have targeted your life support systems, your engines, or your command center with equal precision. The choice to disable only your weapons was intentional. Kethver felt ice forming in his stomach. What do you want? I want you to understand what you're facing, Rodriguez replied. Commander Singh, please demonstrate our defensive capabilities for the Admiral's education. The Indomitable didn't move, didn't maneuver, didn't even change its orientation. It simply existed in space, waiting. But around it, reality seemed to bend. Kethver watched in amazement as hundreds of small drones materialized around the human ship, moving in perfect coordination. Admiral, Rodriguez explained, you're looking at our point defense system. Each drone operates with quantum-level processing speed and can track thousands of targets simultaneously. Allow me to show you what this means. She nodded to her tactical officer. Launch 100 practice missiles at our own ship. The Indomitable fired a spread of missiles at itself, a demonstration so confident it took Kethver's breath away. The missiles approached from multiple directions, each one programmed to behave like a real weapon. As they came within range, the defensive drones responded. What followed was like watching a perfectly choreographed dance. The drones moved with impossible precision, intercepting every missile with surgical accuracy. Not one projectile came within a kilometer of the Indomitable's hull. The defensive system made it look effortless. This is what happens when you attack us, Rodriguez explained. Our defensive systems operate faster than your weapons can fire, faster than your crews can think, faster than your computers can calculate targeting solutions. Kethver's tactical officer spoke in a shaking voice. Sir, our combat computers are analyzing the human defensive response. According to the calculations, their system could intercept approximately 50,000 incoming projectiles simultaneously. 50,000. Kethver's entire fleet could only fire about 40,000 projectiles in a coordinated salvo. The human ship could defend against more weapons than his entire fleet could bring to bear. But that's not the worst part, Rodriguez continued, as if she could read his thoughts. Commander Singh, please demonstrate our offensive capabilities. Target all 800 ships. Disable their engines only. Aye, Captain. Targeting solutions calculated and locked. The Indomitable's main weapons arrays came online. Ketfer watched his sensors with growing horror as energy signatures built across the human ship's hull. There were hundreds of weapon ports, each one larger than the main guns on his own flagship. But what happened next defied everything he thought he knew about space combat. 800 beams of energy lanced out from the Indomitable simultaneously. Each beam was different. Some were particle streams, others were focused gravity waves, still others seemed to bend space itself. Every beam struck a different target with mathematical precision. Across the Hegemony fleet, engines went dead. Not destroyed, simply disabled. The beams had somehow reached inside each ship and selectively shut down specific systems without damaging anything else. 800 ships went from full power to helpless drifting in the space of 3 seconds. Ketfer's flagship was among them. His engine room reported complete power failure in their main drive systems, but everything else remained functional. Life support, communications, sensors, all working perfectly. Only the engines had been touched. How? Ketfer asked in a whisper. How is this possible? Admiral, Rodriguez said gently, you're asking the wrong question. The question isn't how we do this. The question is why we only sent one ship to do it. The bridge of Ketfer's flagship fell silent. Around them, 800 ships drifted helplessly, while one human vessel sat motionless in space, completely untouched by the greatest fleet the Hegemony had ever assembled. You see, Rodriguez continued, every species in the galaxy makes the same mistake. You think warfare is about numbers. You think if you bring enough ships, you can overcome any opposition. But numbers only matter when the opponents are roughly equal in capability. She paused, letting that sink in. We're not equal, Admiral. We're not even close. One human ship carries more firepower than your entire fleet. Our defensive systems can stop anything you can throw at us. Our weapons can disable your entire force without breaking a sweat. Ketfer found his voice. If you're so powerful, why don't you just destroy us? Why disable instead of kill? Because, Rodriguez said quietly, we're not monsters. We don't believe in slaughter when victory can be achieved without it. Your crews are soldiers following orders. They don't deserve to die for their leader's poor decisions. She leaned forward slightly on the screen. But make no mistake, Admiral. We could destroy your entire fleet just as easily as we disabled it. Every ship, every crew member, every trace that you ever existed, gone in seconds. We choose not to do that. We hope you'll remember that choice. The communications channel closed, leaving Ketfer alone with his thoughts and his disabled fleet. Around him, 800 ships drifted in space, their crews alive and unharmed but completely powerless. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Ketfer understood what true defeat looked like. Not destruction, not death, but the absolute certainty that resistance was futile. The humans had demonstrated something more terrifying than superior firepower. They had demonstrated mercy, and that mercy made their power seem infinite. Captain Rodriguez opened a communication channel that broadcast across the entire new Geneva system. Her message would reach not only the disabled Hegemony fleet, but also the quantum communication relays that would carry her words to every corner of the galaxy within hours. This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the United Colonial Ship Indomitable, speaking to all who are listening. What you have witnessed here today is not a demonstration of human military might. It is a demonstration of human military philosophy. Aboard his powerless flagship, Admiral Ketfer listened with growing amazement. The human captain was about to explain something that had puzzled galactic intelligence services for decades. Many of you are wondering why we send only one ship, Rodriguez continued. Your military analysts have debated this question for years. Some think it's arrogance. Some think it's stupidity. Some think we simply don't understand how space warfare works. She paused, looking directly into the camera. The truth is simpler and more complex than any of your theories. We send one ship because one ship is enough. Not because we lack others. We have fleets that could darken your skies and turn your planets to ash. We send one because we refuse to normalize the militarization of space. The statement sent shockwaves through listening audiences across the galaxy. If the humans had fleets, why did they never use them? Let me tell you a story about human history, Rodriguez said. 50 years ago, when we first reached the stars, we studied your civilizations carefully. We saw the Zephyrian Empire with its 10,000 warships. We saw the crystalline collective's geometric formations. We saw species after species locked in an endless arms race, building more and more ships, spending more and more resources on weapons. She gestured toward the disabled Hegemony fleet around her. We saw where this leads. Entire civilizations existing only to feed their military machines. Resources that could have gone to exploration, to science, to improving the lives of citizens, all poured into building bigger fleets for the next war. Planets stripped bare to build weapons. Generations growing up knowing nothing but the rhythm of conflict. Admiral Kethfer felt an uncomfortable recognition. The Hegemony did spend nearly 60% of its budget on military expenses. Most of their subject worlds existed primarily to support the fleet. Humanity chose a different path, Rodriguez continued. We decided that warfare should be exceptional, decisive, and brief. We decided that if we were going to fight, we would fight so effectively that no one would want to fight us twice. The implications began to dawn on listeners across the galaxy. The humans hadn't stumbled into their single-ship doctrine by accident. They had chosen it deliberately. Every human ship is a statement, Rodriguez explained. It says, this conflict ends here. We will not participate in your arms race. But we will not be victims of it either. We put all our military research into making each ship utterly decisive rather than building many ships of ordinary capability. She turned to look at something off camera, then back to the audience. Do you understand what this means? When we send one ship, we're not sending a probe or a scout or an advance guard. We're sending our entire military response to your threat. One ship carries the full weight of human military power. One ship is authorized to end the conflict by any means necessary. The psychological impact of this revelation rippled through the listening audience. Every previous human intervention needed to be reconsidered. Those weren't small engagements. They were humanity's full military response. Admiral Kethfer, Rodriguez said, addressing him directly, you brought 800 ships to intimidate one human colony. In response, we sent everything we needed to resolve this situation. Not everything we had, everything we needed. Do you understand the difference? Kethfer's throat was dry as he answered. You're saying that one ship represents your complete response to our entire fleet? Exactly. We don't escalate conflicts by sending bigger and bigger fleets. We end them by sending exactly what's required. Today, one ship was required. Tomorrow, against a different threat, one ship will still be required. Our doctrine doesn't change based on enemy numbers. The communications officer on Kethfer's bridge looked up from his console with wide eyes. Sir, I'm monitoring galactic communication networks. This broadcast is being transmitted across the entire galaxy. Every major government is receiving this in real time. Rodriguez continued her explanation. Some of you are wondering about our fleet strength. How many ships like the Indomitable do we have? The answer is enough. Enough to respond to any threat, anywhere, at any time. Enough to ensure that our philosophy of single-ship response remains viable. She paused for emphasis. But here's what you really need to understand. We could have built 1,000 ordinary ships with the resources we put into the Indomitable. We chose not to. We chose to build ships so advanced, so capable, that quantity becomes irrelevant. One ship that cannot be defeated is worth more than 1,000 ships that might be. Admiral Kethfer asked the question that every military leader in the galaxy was thinking. How many ships like this do you actually have? Rodriguez's smile was neither threatening nor reassuring. Admiral, that's classified information. But I will tell you this. We have never sent more than one ship to any conflict because we have never needed to. Our shipyards remain active. Our research continues. Our doctrine evolves. The unstated implication hung in the space between them. The humans weren't standing still. Whatever technological advantage they had today, they were working to expand it tomorrow. Let me share one more piece of information, Rodriguez said. The Indomitable's defensive systems stopped your entire fleet's attack without strain. Our offensive systems disabled 800 ships in 3 seconds. But the Indomitable is not our newest ship. She's not our most advanced ship. She's simply the ship that was closest to your location when this incident began. The effect of this statement on galactic military thinking would be profound. If the Indomitable wasn't even humanity's best ship, what were their newest vessels capable of? This brings us to the real purpose of today's demonstration, Rodriguez said. Humanity is offering the galaxy a choice. You can continue the old pattern of arms races and endless military buildups. You can keep spending your resources on bigger and bigger fleets. You can keep preparing for wars that nobody wins. She leaned forward toward the camera. Or you can accept that there is now a force in the galaxy that makes those arms races pointless. A force that will intervene in conflicts not to conquer, but to end them. A force that offers peace through the simple promise that war will be swift, decisive, and costly for aggressors. Admiral Kethfer realized that this entire incident had been orchestrated not just to defeat his fleet, but to send a message to the entire galaxy. The humans weren't just demonstrating their military capability. They were offering to reshape how galactic civilization approached conflict. The choice is yours, Rodriguez concluded. Continue building fleets to fight each other, knowing that humanity will intervene if conflicts get out of hand. Or find better ways to resolve your differences. Find ways that don't require anyone to build weapons of mass destruction. The communication channel closed, leaving the galaxy to contemplate what they had witnessed. 800 ships disabled by one. A military doctrine based on overwhelming individual capability rather than numerical superiority. A philosophy that promised peace through the threat of absolute defeat. God in his command chair. Admiral Kethfer stared at his dead controls and wondered if his military career was over. More than that, he wondered if the era of traditional military thinking had just ended. Around him, 800 ships drifted in space, their crews alive and unhurt but completely powerless. The most powerful fleet the Hegemony had ever assembled, defeated without firing an effective shot. And somewhere in the back of his mind, one terrible question echoed. If this wasn't even humanity's best ship, what were their newest vessels capable of? The recording of the new Geneva incident became the most watched piece of media in galactic history. Within 6 hours, every major news network was broadcasting the footage of 800 ships being disabled by one. Within 12 hours, military academies across the galaxy had suspended regular classes to analyze what they had witnessed. Within 24 hours, 3 separate armed conflicts had ended with immediate ceasefires. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chun sat in her office on Earth, reading reports from across human space. The reaction to Rodriguez's demonstration had exceeded even her most optimistic projections. The psychological impact of humanity's doctrine was spreading faster than she had dared hope. Admiral, her aide reported, we're receiving communication requests from 47 different governments. They all want to discuss the same thing: avoiding future conflicts with humanity. Chun nodded. This was exactly what she had hoped for. Fear could end wars more effectively than weapons if properly applied. Schedule meetings with their ambassadors. Make it clear that we're interested in peaceful resolution of all outstanding issues. On the other side of the galaxy, the ripple effects were just beginning. In the boardrooms of major military contractors, stock prices were collapsing as governments questioned the wisdom of massive fleet purchases. If humanity could defeat 800 ships with one, what was the point of building traditional fleets? The Zephyrian Empire's Strategic Council met in emergency session. For 3,000 years, they had maintained dominance through their massive 10,000-ship fleet. Now that advantage seemed meaningless. The question before us, said High Admiral Zefkar, is whether we attempt to match human technology or accept human dominance in military affairs. Can we match their technology? Asked another council member. Unknown. Our best scientists estimate it would take centuries to reach their current level, assuming we could reverse engineer their capabilities. And by then, who knows how much further they'll have advanced. Similar conversations were happening in capitals across the galaxy. The humans had fundamentally changed the strategic balance by demonstrating that quantity could not overcome quality if the quality gap was large enough, but the most dramatic changes were happening in smaller conflicts. The aquatic republics and the methane clans had been fighting over mining rights in the Kepler sector for 6 months. Their fleets faced each other across a disputed asteroid field, each side waiting for the right moment to attack. Then they saw the new Geneva footage. Both sides realized simultaneously that their conflict might draw human attention. Neither wanted to face a ship like the Indomitable. Within hours, diplomatic channels that had been closed for months suddenly reopened. Within days, they had reached a compromise that gave both sides acceptable access to the disputed resources. The psychological warfare aspect of humanity's doctrine was proving more effective than anyone had anticipated. Captain Rodriguez completed her mission at New Geneva in a way that surprised Admiral Cathfar. Instead of leaving the Hegemony fleet stranded, she ordered her engineering teams to repair their disabled ships. Every vessel in the Hegemony fleet was restored to full functionality before the Indomitable departed. Consider this a gift, Rodriguez told Cathfar during their final communication. A demonstration that we are not conquerors. We have no interest in taking your ships or claiming your territory. But understand this clearly. Threaten human colonies again. Threaten any innocent colonies. And the next human ship that arrives may not be so diplomatic. Cathfar watched the Indomitable disappear into hyperspace, leaving his restored fleet behind. His ships were functional, his crews were alive, and his military career was probably finished. But he was beginning to understand something that few military leaders in galactic history had grasped. Sometimes the most decisive victory was the one that left your enemies grateful to be alive. The broader implications of the incident continued to unfold over the following months. The Galactic Federation Council called an emergency session to address the human question. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to discuss how to respond to humanity's demonstration of overwhelming military superiority. The debate lasted for weeks. Some species argued for attempting to match human technology through cooperative research. Others suggested forming defensive alliances to counter human power. Still others proposed immediate diplomatic overtures to secure human friendship. In the end, they reached a conclusion that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. A resolution passed by an overwhelming margin. Formal recognition of humanity's single-ship doctrine and agreement to bring territorial disputes to mediation, rather than risk human intervention. The Resolution included a clause that sent shockwaves through galactic military establishments. Member worlds would reduce their military spending by 50% over the next decade and redirect those resources toward exploration and development. Admiral Chen read the Federation resolution with deep satisfaction. Humanity had achieved something that philosophers had dreamed about for centuries. They had made war unprofitable. But the most dramatic changes were visible in the numbers that crossed her desk every week. Galactic military expenditures had dropped by 40% in just 6 months. Construction of new warships had slowed to levels not seen in centuries. Meanwhile, funding for scientific research, exploration missions, and civilian infrastructure had increased by over 300%. Species that had been locked in arms races for generations were suddenly finding resources to invest in their citizens' well-being. Worlds that had existed primarily to support military fleets were developing civilian economies. The galaxy was becoming a more peaceful place, not through treaties or negotiations, but through the simple recognition that military conflict was no longer viable. Yet humanity continued to build new ships. The construction yards around Earth, Luna, and Mars operated around the clock. But they weren't building fleets. They were building individual vessels of extraordinary capability. Each new ship incorporated lessons learned from previous conflicts and technological advances that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. "How many ships do we have now?" asked Admiral Park during a Defense Council meeting. Chum smiled. "Enough. That's not a number, Admiral. It's the only number that matters," Chun replied. "We have enough ships to respond to any threat, anywhere in the galaxy, at any time. The exact count is less important than the certainty of our response." The construction yards were building humanity's future, one ship at a time. Each vessel was designed to operate alone, to be completely self-sufficient, and to be capable of ending any conflict it encountered. They were statements of human philosophy made manifest in steel and energy. 6 months after New Geneva, the results of humanity's gamble were clear. War hadn't ended. Conflicts still arose between species. Territorial disputes still occurred, and political tensions still existed. But the nature of those conflicts had changed fundamentally. Instead of military buildups, species invested in diplomacy. Instead of arms races, they competed in technological advancement and cultural achievement. Instead of preparing for war, they prepared for peace. Admiral Kethvar, stripped of his military rank but not imprisoned, found himself studying human philosophy in his retirement. The Hegemony had given him a choice: court-martial for losing 800 ships to one enemy vessel, or voluntary retirement to study how such defeats could be avoided in the future. He chose study. Reading human military theory, he began to understand what Rodriguez had tried to tell him. War was not about destroying your enemies. It was about convincing them that resistance was futile. The humans had achieved perfect victory not by killing their opponents, but by demonstrating that killing was unnecessary when you possessed absolute superiority. In his final report to the Hegemony Strategic Command, Keffer wrote, "The humans have not conquered the galaxy. They have made conquest obsolete. They have not destroyed our fleets. They have made fleets irrelevant. They have achieved something that no military force in history has accomplished. They have made peace. The only logical choice." The galaxy had learned why humans sent only one ship. One ship was enough. One ship could end any conflict. One ship could enforce peace across the stars. And somewhere in Earth's orbital shipyards, construction continued on the next generation of human vessels. Each one a promise to the galaxy that wars would remain brief, decisive, and costly for those who chose to start them. The age of massive fleets was over. The age of humanity had begun.